of God transcends the storms of life. And so that second week, we said this, that if God has given us a word, if he's given us a perspective on the storm that we're in and on the life that we are living, a perspective that is higher than ours, that is different than ours, we have to ask the question, what difference does it make? I do think that there is an epidemic, and it's been going on since the first century. This is not something that happened in the last 10 years, of people who hear the word of God but don't allow it to change their lives. Hearers and not doers. And sometimes doers that never want to listen. And both of those things are errant. We talked about that last week. So when the word of God comes to us, when the promises of God come to us, it has to make a difference in our life. And what difference does it make? And so Paul looks at one of the most beautiful scenes in all the New Testament to me. Paul calls the sailors and the soldiers on that boat. He says, stop working. And put the ropes down, put the oars down. You've been working for 14 days straight without sleep and without food. Now stop. Come over here. And I just imagine Paul putting up one of those little fold-out tables and saying, hey, I've got a loaf of bread, and I'm going to break this bread, and we're going to sit here, we're going to eat. And while the storm rages around them, the wind and the waves and the lightning and the rain and all of the chaos of the storm keeps on shouting at them to be worried, to be anxious, Paul says there's a better word that has come. There is a better word that has come than the word of the storm. And that better word is a word of peace and a word of security, because God says no matter what happens, I'm getting you to the place that I promised I won't get you. Paul even tells them, the angel showed up and said, it's not just about me getting her own. God said he's given every one of your lives to me as a gift. So we're all going to make it. Just stay with me here. And so he sits down at that table. He begins to break the bread. And in the middle of the chaos of the storm, they eat a meal for the first time in 2 weeks. The peace of God shows up when we actually trust the word of God to be true in our life. I'm trying to start fast. So we get to this text now. After the men have been encouraged, that's what it says up in verse 26. It says, or 36, then they all were encouraged and ate some food themselves. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing